We go through the morning. Now that could cause a few problems. We've got a Met Office yellow wind warning in place for West Wales, South West England, and the wind strengthening along the south coast of England through the day as this band of rain moves through. Something we're not seeing for a while, so a spell of quite heavy rain, some snow over the hills of northern England and parts of Scotland also. Turning brighter for Wales and southern England come the afternoon, but a few showers moving in. Also turning milder, but it'll feel pretty cold again across northern areas, 5 or 6 degrees, but wetter and windier weather is on the way for Friday. This swirl, that's Storm Eowyn arriving Thursday night and through Friday. The strongest winds just tucked in here, Northern Ireland, southern central Scotland, northern England and North Wales. That's why we've got an amber warning in force as that storm moves through. Damaging gusts of wind, 60, 70, perhaps 80 miles an hour, maybe more in some locations in that amber warning area. But yellow warnings are also in place for wind, rain and some snow. Check out all the warnings for yourself on the Met Office website.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, good evening, everybody. You're watching State of the Nation on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin, the show that speaks up for you, the forgotten majority. Coming up tonight, the great distraction is underway today as the Labour government seeks to blame the Southport atrocities on, get this, online knife sales. That's right. Not immigration, not terror ideology, but people buying knives on Amazon. But I want to go deeper tonight and ask more troubling questions about the brutal murder of those poor 3 little girls. Meanwhile, as Donald Trump hits the ground running with his presidency, his people have called for Maga to become mega, encouraging nations here in Europe to embrace his policies. But what would making the UK great again really look like? I'll be talking tonight to a top Trump advisor. Deeply shocking figures on illegal immigration in Britain were released today. In the last 4 years, some 175,000 illegal migrants were recorded by UK authorities, with an estimated 1.2 million illegal migrants living and possibly working here in the UK today. I talked to a leading expert about a radical new plan to stop this crisis by sending those migrants outside of the UK to a very specific island. Plus, as a Keighley rape gang is sentenced to nearly 58 years for multiple sexual offences against 2 children, we are going to be renewing the question, why have we not had a public inquiry into the rape gangs? Because you know what? Like many of you out there, I am not letting go of this issue. State of the Nation with me tonight, Matt Goodwin, starts now. Now, I'll also be joined tonight by my panel, columnist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/yoursay and hit me up on X at GoodwinMJ. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Sophia Wensler.
Matt, thank you. Good evening. It's just gone 8 o'clock. These are your headlines. Russia has responded to Donald Trump's ultimatum to end the war in Ukraine. The US president said Russia will face high levels of taxes, tariffs and sanctions if President Putin does not end the war. Posting on his Truth Social, Trump expressed his love for the Russian people and his good relationship with Putin, and then issued a direct warning to stop this ridiculous war. Russia's UN envoy has said the Kremlin would need to see what Trump thinks is a deal comprises of before proceeding. It's not merely the question of ending the war, he said. It's first and foremost a question of addressing root causes of the Ukrainian crisis. Meanwhile, the Defence Secretary has issued a stark warning to Putin after a Russian spy ship's been located operating off the UK coast. Speaking in the Commons, John Healey warned the Russian president, "We see you and we know what you're doing." The ship's believed to be used for gathering intelligence and mapping the UK's critical underwater infrastructure. It entered UK waters on Monday, prompting the Royal Navy to deploy HMS Somerset and HMS Tyne to track it. The Afghan suspect in the German knife attack that left 2 dead this morning was not motivated by radical Islam, according to the country's interior minister. The suspect deliberately attacked a kindergarten group in the park with a kitchen knife, leaving a 2-year-old boy and a 41-year-old man dead. Police said a 28-year-old Afghan national has now been arrested, while 2 seriously injured people are receiving treatment in hospital. The Bavarian Interior Minister said the suspect was undergoing psychiatric treatment and had his asylum process closed, and said he would voluntarily leave Germany in December, but had not left and remained under treatment. Meanwhile, people have begun to gather in protest with a placard reading, "We won't let diversity kill us." The stabbing adds to a string of violent attacks in Germany that have raised concerns over security and stirred up tensions over migration. Back in the UK, a 12-year-old boy who was fatally stabbed in Birmingham on Tuesday has been named by police as Leo Ross. Leo, described as funny and sweet, was found with serious injuries and died in hospital. A 14-year-old boy has been arrested in connection with the fatal stabbing. Police have now revealed the 14-year-old is also being held in connection with the assault of an 8-year-old woman in the same area. And a danger to life warning has been issued for parts of the UK ahead of Storm Eowyn, as Britain prepares to be lashed by severe gales. Gusts could reach up to 90 miles per hour in coastal areas, bringing risks of travel disruption, power cuts and flying debris. The northwest will see the strongest winds, but large waves and dangerous conditions are also expected along seafronts. Heavy rain and snow will also spread east, with up to 25 centimetres of snow possible on higher ground. The Met Office says the situation could escalate as the storm rapidly develops tomorrow. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Matt.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin. Now you, the British people, are being gaslit. You are being lied to. While the people always sensed there was something unusual about the Southport atrocities ever since that fateful day, the authorities have hid behind legal processes and bureaucracies. Yesterday, Keir Starmer admitted that he knew the details about Axel Ruda-Cabana's background long before they came out. Check out this clip.
Yes. I knew the details as they were emerging. That is the usual practice in a case such as this. But you know and I know that it would not have been right to disclose those details.
But this is not consistent with Keir Starmer's previous actions. During the 2017 Finsbury Park terror attack, Starmer called it a terror attack before terrorism charges had been announced. Keir Starmer also did the same in the case of the London Bridge attack in 2017 and the Plymouth attack in 2019. And of course, after Southport, he had no problem at all in deriding many people in this country as far-right thugs before they went to court and had their cases heard. Yesterday, he appealed to contempt of court laws for not releasing the information about Southport earlier. Check it out.
Are not just my choices, though it is a choice I would make. It is also the law of the land. That is why I couldn't disclose the details. It's why others couldn't disclose the details. It's why all of you as journalists couldn't disclose the details, because the same laws applied to you just as they applied to me. And it's really important that we make that clear. But the purpose of the rule is to protect the justice that the families and the victims are entitled to.
But if it applies to Southport, why didn't this apply to 3 other terror attacks, as well as those protests? We're now, of course, hearing reports that CPS pressured Merseyside police not to release details about the suspect. But just to top it all off, the government now wants you to believe that this was a case of knife purchase laws not being strong enough. You may remember when Sir David Amess was murdered by an Islamist terrorist, parliamentarians tried to make the issue about online abuse. Let's just be nice to one another. Well, the same thing is happening now. The government has fast-tracked tighter restrictions on online knife sales for under 18s, as if Amazon was to blame for Southport. Writing in The Sun today, the Prime Minister called Axel Ruda-Cabana a 2-click killer. But the fact of the matter is that the system, the state, failed the victims of Southport, much like the state failed the victims of Pakistani rape gangs. It's time for the obfuscation, the concealment, the cover-ups and the deflections to come to an end. It's time for the people in power to tell us, the people, the truth. Now, I'm joined tonight to discuss Keir Starmer's response by my panel, columnist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Scarlett, if I could come to you first. I mean, the Labour Party is hideously out of touch with the country on this, isn't it?
Can we get a few things straight? What happened in Southport was not a terror attack, right?
Based on what?
Based on the government definition of terrorism, which is that the use or threat of violence or damage to property to influence the government or intimidate the public. The action must be intended to advance a political, religious, racial or ideological cause. This guy was a psychopath. This guy was interested in violence. He wanted to murder. Everybody who murders is not a terrorist.
Scarlett, so in which case, Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper have both confirmed they knew a lot of this information back at the time of the attack. Here's my question. Why did the Labour government then allow this enormous vacuum to open up, allow certain claims about this guy to be spread online? Why, when we've seen, as I've just said, Keir Starmer has entered that vacuum in the past, has given people information, has rushed to call incidents terrorism, why not this time?
Okay, because this wasn't a terrorist incident, right? The other incidents were clearly terrorist incidents. And what happened on this one is it was, at the time, it was unlike people thought he was going to plead not guilty or not plead because he was refusing to speak at all. And they didn't want to jeopardise the court case, right? And that's what it was about. It was not about keeping things secret, right? We all know what happened. We know that this man murdered 3 girls,
well,
right?
let's just pick up on that, Patrick. It's not about keeping things secret.
Well, I'm afraid, Scarlett, more holes than the proverbial Swiss cheese in that, right? The thing that convicted this guy of these murders was that he was caught literally red-handed with a knife in his hand, having slaughtered 3 little girls, badly injured 10 others. There was, you know, that was overwhelming evidence. The fact that he'd been through Prevent was hardly going to sway a conviction or a not conviction. And as we look back at precedent, the Sir David Amess case, within 48 hours, the BBC had reported authoritatively, after having it been sent via Home Office sources, that the suspect there had been through Prevent, right? So Keir Starmer absolutely could have made that detail clear. And the idea that just disclosing that this killer of multiple little girls had been through the Prevent programme would have potentially led to him not being able to go on trial is the most 24-carat, utter, I'm going to have to say, BS, right? He's pulling the wool over our eyes and everyone's
Scarlett, Patrick, it's, I won't repeat what he said, but it's nonsense. It's complete nonsense.
I don't understand the fuss. We know that he went through the Prevent process, and what it shows is exactly what is wrong with the Prevent process, because 3 times he was referred to Prevent, but because he didn't have an ideology, but because he just wanted to murder people and violence, he was let go. This is the problem with Prevent.
Look,
Prevent is about ideology.
He had an Al-Qaeda manual. He'd produced ricin, which they didn't even tell the neighbourhood about for several weeks. I mean, it's utterly...
Patrick, are you trying to say that this guy had an ideology? I mean, the whole...
Yes, potentially, because I'll tell you what, right? The elite media overwhelmingly has said, oh, this is what the criminal justice professionals are saying, so of course it's true, right? Have they got the memory of a goldfish? We've just been through a furore over the rape gangs in which all the criminal justice professionals have been turning a blind eye and indulging in groupthink, bending over backwards to avoid difficult conclusions. I'm a sceptic now. I'm thinking they're doing it again. They're bending over backwards to keep the I word out of this case. Now, I didn't even hear Keir Starmer yet say whether the claim originating from Tommy Robinson, unreliable source, that this kid is going to the mosque in Belmarsh jail, is that true or not? And if not, say no. If so, cough to it. But the idea that it's definitely proven there's no Islamic element in this is not true.
Scarlett,
I have no idea what's happening in Belmarsh. What we do know is that 3 times he was sent to Prevent, and the problem with Prevent is it doesn't prevent very much, because if you don't have an ideology, they're not interested, and so they gave him back. And Jonathan Hall, who
said that more details could have been released.
Who said that that's fine. What Jonathan Hall said, the problem with Prevent is there was nowhere for this man, who was clearly a murderous young man, to go. And actually the question is what do we do to stop people when we know that they're violent? We knew he was violent, right? And nothing happened because they couldn't find an ideology.
And Keir Starmer's answer is to stop him doing online shopping when there's a drawer in his own kitchen where he could have got a kitchen.
Can I just ask a question just about the Labour Party? Let's imagine for a second that a white boy had gone into a dance class, had murdered 3 black boys, and we discovered, the police, Labour ministers, the government discovered that on his PC was some far-right literature and he'd produced ricin. Are we honestly now led to believe that under that situation, the Labour Prime Minister and the Labour government would have said nothing, would have urged caution, would have said, hang on, everybody, let's wait for the court, let's wait for the trial? Because out there in the country, people can sense, again with Keir Starmer, they sense this 2-tier approach to these kinds of issues.
But what you're trying to say, which you do not know, I mean, that's what's so dangerous about what you're saying at the moment, is you're trying to say that this guy had Islamist ideology, and that's why... No, can you let me finish? Because I let you finish. And that's why he murdered those girls, right? As far as everybody knows, of course, if I want to commit mass murder... Yes, I'd look up ISIS. That's what they're good at mass murder, right? There's nothing to say that this guy was an Islamist. That's the problem. That's what I keep saying. The thing about Prevent is because he didn't have ideology, he was sent away. And we have nothing, and they're called moos. It is because of the motives. It's mixed motives, unknown and unstable. And they are the most dangerous people. And the anti-terrorist people say they do not know how to deal with these young men who get everything on screen, right?
Well, I'm sure there will be lots of people out there wondering how perhaps Keir Starmer might have responded under different conditions. We should say, by the way, that we cannot verify some of the statements made around what is or is not happening in Belmarsh Prison currently, but thank you to my panel for that. Now, after the break, we're going to be revealing, check this out, what a UK version of Maga, Make America Great Again, would look like, and speaking to one of Donald Trump's former top advisors about turning MAGA into Maga, Make UK Great Again. See you shortly.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Newly released MI5 files reveal that Queen Elizabeth II was kept in the dark over the treachery of a senior courtier.
Yeah, for almost a decade. This is Sir Anthony Blunt, who played a double life passing intelligence, the KGB, during World War II as a senior MI5 officer. But, remarkably, he was allowed to keep his position amid fears of a major scandal if the truth came out.
Well, now those files have been released by the National Archives, which includes the Queen's response to finding out a trusted member like Anthony Blunt was really a traitor.
Well, joining us now in the studio is GB News royal correspondent Cameron Walker. Good to see you this morning, Cameron. This is astonishing.
Oh, absolutely. And this wasn't a little spy. This was Anthony Blunt was a full-blown spy. He passed to the Soviets the D-Day deception plans but during the Second World War. He was working for MI5 but a double agent for the KGB as well.
The wrong plans.
He passed on the plans.
The wrong ones.
The wrong one in 1944. Yeah. Exactly. But he then got a job inside Buckingham Palace as one of the Queen's most trusted aides and courtiers, the surveyor of her art, essentially like kind of an art advisor for her late Majesty. There was always suspicions about Anthony Blunt way back in the early 50s because he was part of this notorious Cambridge spy ring, a group of 5 boys recruited at Cambridge. 2 of these people fled to Moscow in 1951. Anthony stayed behind in London and subsequently got a job inside Buckingham Palace. And it wasn't until 1964 that he confessed to his treachery. The reason he confessed was because he was granted immunity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, your views have been coming in. One of you has said, which genius at Labour HQ decided to blame the murder of those 3 little girls on Amazon? Richard says, if this knifing incident was caused by Amazon selling a knife, Are we allowed to hold the terrorist manual and not be extremist? Keep your views coming in. Now, Donald Trump has been busy already signing many ambitious executive orders in his first couple of days in the White House, while his new best friend, Elon Musk, has been urging the world to go from MAGA to MEGA. Make America great again to make Europe great again, or make England great again. But what I wanted to ask is, what would the MAGA agenda look like in the UK? Now, this morning I put a few ideas in my newsletter, imagining that we all woke up one day and the government had suddenly introduced the equivalent of what Donald Trump has introduced. Just think about it. A national border emergency has been declared. The military has been sent to the Channel to detain illegal migrants as they arrive on the shore. The government has announced that we are immediately withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. We're reforming the Human Rights Act. We're bringing an immediate end to low-skilled, low-wage migration, which is making us poorer, not richer. We're ending woke ideology, gender gobbledygook in our public sector institutions, from the NHS to the military. We're immediately reviewing all of our foreign aid obligations to determine whether they serve our national interest. All civil servants are going immediately back to work in the office 5 days a week. The list goes on and on. So is that what our country needs, a UK version of MAGA? Well, I'm joined now to discuss that question by former advisor to the Trump campaign, George Papadopoulos. George, it's great to have you with us this evening. I say this evening, it's the afternoon, I think, where you are. Let's just talk about this a bit. I mean, Elon Musk saying that the MAGA agenda is potentially about to go global. What's your read on that?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And look, we're in day 3 of Trump 2.0, and the administration has really hit the ground running. And I truly believe not only British politics, but global politics will inevitably be affected by this new wave of the Trump administration. And what I think Elon Musk is really talking about here is, because he is one of the architects of the current administration's government efficiency program. He's obviously been a massive help to the Trump campaign as the arbiter of free speech and getting real facts out to the American public at a time when, during the last election, so much critical information was actually suppressed, from the Hunter Biden laptop story to various other issues that really pulled the wool over the American people's eyes. So I think what Elon Musk and even Donald Trump himself are really showcasing to the world is, if it can happen in America, it could happen throughout the entire world. Take a page out of the American playbook and figure out how you can actually uphold your own values, your traditions, and put your citizens first. And you laid out a lot of interesting ways that the UK could actually do that. And certainly President Trump doing that in just his 3rd day in office in the United States, I think is an excellent blueprint.
Well, George, let me give you a few ideas, just throw this at you. So let's do the equivalent of what Donald Trump has already done. Let's withdraw the UK from the Paris Agreement, and instead of spending £11.6 billion on green madness, why don't we spend £11.6 billion on fixing our NHS, where people are dying in the corridors, families are having to say goodbye to their loved ones in horrific conditions. Well, here's another one. Let's not only force civil servants back to work, but let's ban all political propaganda from public sector institutions. You shouldn't be wearing rainbow lanyards if you're working in the NHS or universities. In fact, here's another one. Why don't we actually have a UK DOGE, a UK Department for Government Efficiency, that goes through every public sector institution, slashing waste and passing on those savings to UK taxpayers who are having to go through one of the biggest cost of living crises in this country's history, before we even get to the immigration stuff, before we even, for example, start to send illegal migrants outside of the UK onto a specific island that we're going to talk about later on in the show. This is the stuff, you know, when I put it out this morning, there's a lot of enthusiasm about this agenda, because I think many Brits are looking at this consensus in Westminster and saying, this isn't really working for me. Now, would Trump be open to helping us with that? Do you think people in the Trump camp get the potential of this agenda to actually go global?
Well, when I was on the Trump campaign in 2016, that's obviously when Brexit was all the rage in the United Kingdom. And actually, candidate Trump at that time was an ardent proponent of Brexit, and of course, what that would result in for the UK economy, the UK values, and of course, the UK's relationship with the United States of America. So certainly, I think President Trump and his team currently are looking around the world, looking for allies. And that's exactly why people like Giorgia Meloni out of Italy and Milei in Argentina were invited to the inauguration. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was not invited to the inauguration. I think you could really read between the lines of the type of partners that this administration is looking forward towards looking and working with. So certainly, hopefully, the Labour changes its outlook on that relationship, and of course, taking care of the United Kingdom's own citizens.
Yeah. Thank you, George. And I was lucky enough to be in Washington during the inauguration, and I didn't see any Labour politicians at all, which I found remarkable. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now, Scarlett, Labour advisor, former Labour advisor, I mean, there is space for a MAGA-type agenda in UK politics. Is there not more polling today? You've got Reform joint top in some of the polls. You've got a lot of public anger there in the country over immigration, over the lack of control over the borders, over this big state that isn't delivering economic growth. We're spending $8 billion last month on just servicing our national debt. I mean, it's crazy. There's space for this, isn't there?
I read through your tweet this morning and I thought, that is a country I really wouldn't want to live in. And I remember David Cameron coming in 2010 and saying, you know, what the Labour government has done for the last, whatever it was, 13 years, is to make it a country at peace with itself. And I think that's what we need to go back to. And I think yours was all about, we'll pick on this and we'll pick on that and we'll be horrible to these people. I mean, actually, what we need to do, I mean, I do actually think Britain is quite great. And I think Europe is quite great.
Do you want to live in this Britain? You want to live in this Britain today?
I want to live in this Britain, in this Britain improved. I want to live in this Britain that is green. I actually don't want, I do not want a climate crisis that America is going to bring on faster.
The problem, Scarlett, with Cameron saying things like that is the whole paradigm has crashed and failed, right? The economic paradigm has failed, living standards at the very best no better off than 20 years ago. Social living standards have completely crashed.
And how much is that due to Brexit?
No, not at all. As we have fractured our society. And I read Matt's Substack, and I think you pretty much nailed it. One thing I would add, because obviously there are some differences with America and Britain, and we have a more extensive welfare state offer, I would add making it illegal for any foreign national to have their name on a social housing tenancy. Yeah. Because where we're broadcasting from in this city, half of all the social tenancies are now in the hands of foreign nationals. That's long-term, subsidised housing meant for the British working class that's been handed over to waves of migrants. And I think that's a betrayal of the British people from all the establishment parties. And it makes me feel quite Trumpian, actually, that we've got to stop that.
There is something about this principle of national preference. I mean, there are lots of people watching this, taxpayers, people pensioners who might have worked their whole lives and paid into the pot. And they just feel as though the British people are not actually being put before others.
No, I mean, I think we've got to look seriously at fairness, and that's what Britain is about, is it fair? And I don't think it always has been. I would like to quickly say that when George said Brexit was so good, well, Brexit didn't bring us any closer to America. We still haven't got a trade deal, and it certainly hasn't. You know, our economy has not gone up since then. So let's leave that one aside. I do think we have to look seriously at housing and how we do it, right? And the problem was that it was need over
entitlement.
Yeah. And we have to change that a bit. But actually, I mean, I do not want a country where, as you say, you know, we're looking at, are you an illegal immigrant? Well, you're foreign and that's not right. And
do you think illegal migrants should be allowed to stay in the country?
No, actually.
Right, so we agree.
No, hold on, Matt.
You should sign up to my Substack.
No, what I feel strongly about, and what I have said for over and over on these programmes for years, is that what we should have is a proper asylum system where we send people home instead of keeping them in hotels for 3 years.
Sure.
It is completely ridiculous.
So some of the things that you know we've been debating around a MAGA agenda for the UK. Let's say if you are convicted of rape gangs or being a member of a rape gang, you should be deported if you're a foreign national or a dual national. Now, YouGov polled that last week. They found that 76% of Brits agree with that. That's what Donald Trump is doing. He's deporting foreign criminals out of the US. Now, that's not being mean. That is being fair. It's saying if you break our laws, if you break our rules, you leave.
No, but we know that in America that there are masses and masses of immigrants who've lived there illegally for decades, right? And they've been working and they've been paying tax, right? And actually, I mean, I just felt your Maga or whatever you called it just was mean. And I also wondered, if we're talking about university free speech, right, is that actually...
I said bring back the Free Speech Act. Let's protect free speech in this country.
I know. So that's Holocaust, that's hate speech.
Yep.
You're really happy with all of that?
Absolutely.
I actually am not.
Well, this debate is going to carry on for some time. Thank you to my panel for discussing MAGA in Mega. Now, in a moment, we will be discussing the radical new plan, get this, to solve what we were just talking about, the illegal migration crisis. It's a good plan. You're going to want to stick around for this. Join me right back here in a few minutes to hear this bold new approach for dealing with illegal migration. See you shortly.
Evening, weather time now from the Met Office here on GB News. This time tomorrow, Storm Eowyn will be fast approaching, bringing potentially damaging gusts of wind during Thursday night and into Friday. Before that, tomorrow there'll be a spell of wet and windy weather, but before that, tonight, relatively calm. Some mist and fog patches, especially over eastern England, and a touch of frost per northeast England, much of eastern Scotland, and many places colder than last night and not far off freezing to start Thursday. In the west, temperatures probably rising a little through the night because this band of rain will be moving in. It's going to make for a soggy start for Northern Ireland tomorrow. Generally, a calm start for Scotland, maybe a few mist and fog patches. Certainly a frosty start for many, particularly in the east. But there's that wet weather across Northern Ireland. Pretty miserable morning rush hour here, and that rain will soon be spreading to West Wales and southwest England. The winds also starting to pick up here as we go through the morning. Now, that could cause a few problems. We've got a Met Office yellow wind warning in place for West Wales, southwest England, and the wind strengthening along the south coast of England through the day as this band of rain moves through. Something we're not seeing for a while, so a spell of quite heavy rain, some snow over the hills of northern England and parts of Scotland also. Turning brighter for Wales and southern England come the afternoon, but a few showers moving in. Also turning milder, but it'll feel pretty cold again across northern areas, 5 or 6 degrees. But wetter and windier weather is on the way for Friday. This swirl, that's Storm Eowyn arriving Thursday night and through Friday. The strongest winds just tucked in here, Northern Ireland, southern central Scotland, northern England and North Wales. That's where we've got an amber warning in force as that storm moves through. Damaging gusts of wind, 60, 70, perhaps 80 miles an hour, maybe more in some locations in that amber warning area. But yellow warnings are also in place for wind, rain and some snow. Check out all the warnings for yourself on the Met Office website.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, we were just discussing, could MAGA go global? Your views. Janet says, great agenda, Matt. Let's make Britain great again. Dave says, this is exactly what this country needs. It's just common sense. If you want the country to be on the up, use MAGA as a blueprint. Well, before we get to a shocking and depressing new story about the rape gangs and why we need that national inquiry, a bombshell new report was released today, a slightly different issue by the University of Oxford's very reputable Migration Observatory. It says that an estimated, get this, 175,000 illegal, unauthorised migrants, and I'm calling them illegal migrants, they're not just unauthorised, entered Britain in the last few years, and there could be According to the Pew Research Centre, 1.2 million illegal migrants already in Britain living and perhaps working. Furthermore, it also points out, and I find this utterly staggering, that of the illegal migrants who have broken our laws, who have come to Britain illegally, of those that have applied for asylum, get this, 70%, 70, were given this asylum protection. Absolutely bonkers. You might as well put a big neon sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying, come on in, we'll give you all asylum. So how do we fix this mess? British taxpayers out there absolutely fed up. They want answers to this. Well, another new report from the think tank Policy Exchange has suggested that we use Ascension Island, one of the UK's overseas territories, as a base to process illegal migrants' asylum claims. The plan would see those who cross the channel sent directly to the territory, where they would wait to see if their asylum claims were accepted. If they are, they would stay on Ascension Island until it is safe to return or be sent to a third safe country. If their claims are rejected, then they could be sent back to their home country, perhaps with the UK using things like foreign aid, visa penalties, to apply pressure on those countries to take their nationals back. So is this a solution that we so desperately need when it comes to fixing our borders? With me tonight in the studio next to me is immigration expert Dr. Mike Jones. Mike, Ascension Island, the new Rwanda, this is the answer, is it not?
No, I think Policy Exchange have done some excellent research on migration. Professor Richard Eakins in particular, he's written some great stuff on the Rwanda plan, for instance, but I do not support the Ascension Island plan for two reasons. Number one, it doesn't get to the root cause of the problem, which is the Human Rights Act. The pull factor is the fact we can't deport people. Whether or not their asylum applications are accepted or not, we can't get rid of them. Secondly, it's extremely expensive. I mean, Ascension Island is 4,000 miles away. It's sandwiched between Angola and Brazil.
Right.
There's very little infrastructure on the island, and creating these sort of detention centres on there would be hideously expensive.
Well, we're currently spending, just to put some numbers at you, Mike, the people out there watching this show, they're spending £5.4 billion every year on our broken borders crisis. So why don't we take some of that money, spend it on putting a few buildings up on Ascension Island, a few flights over there? Surely we could afford it.
I think Ascension Island would actually exacerbate the cost difficulties with this. I mean, I think Jacob Rees-Mogg, who was privy to calculations on this when he was in government, he said it would cost about £1 million per illegal migrant to send them to Ascension Island. I mean, there's very little there. They've got basic water and electricity. There's a police station, but no prison. There's sort of basic medical care, but no hospital. It would cost a hideous amount of money. I mean, look at the kerfuffle with HS2.
So forgive me for being direct, but I share the people who are watching this show. I share their utter exasperation with the state of this crisis, the dire state of this crisis. So how about this? How about number one, we leave the European Convention on Human Rights at ECHR? How about number two, we reform the Human Rights Act? And how about number three, we have an active deterrent, call it Ascension Island, call it an island similar to that, where we say, OK, if you arrive here illegally, we're going to detain you, we're going to immediately deport you. That is the answer, isn't it? That's the answer to this illegal migration crisis.
Well, leaving the Council of Europe, which would mean we'd leave the European Court of Human Rights, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. Amending the Human Rights Act, ideally the optimal solution is to actually get rid of the Human Rights Act altogether. You don't need the British Bill of Rights, it's a complete myth. But why do you need Ascension? We have detention centres that have been closed down here. You've got...
Well, I'll give you a reason, because a lot of these people seem to magically escape into the communities and the streets, and some of them end up going on harming British people. I don't think British people want illegal migrants in their own country. But I mean, some of these people, just to play devil's advocate, some of these people are genuine refugees, are they not? They're here to sort of, get human rights, kind of protect themselves from the countries they've come from. I mean, maybe the devil's advocate question here is we should be allowing 175,000 people who enter the country illegally to stay in the country. We should be giving them jobs. We should be giving them a place on the NHS.
No, I don't agree with that. I mean, if you look at refugee flows historically, they tend to be a mixed multitude, to use a phrase from the Old Testament. They travel with their families. kids, cousins, grandparents, and so on. But what you see with the child migrant crisis are young men travelling alone.
70% are young men, about 70%.
Mostly young men. They've destroyed their documents. They have not
Which is
claimed...
illegal, destroying their documents. That's an illegal act right there.
Precisely, and they haven't claimed asylum in, a third safe country. So these are mostly illegal economic migrants.
So when you see numbers like I've just read out, 1.2 million, according to the Pew Research Centre, 1.2 million illegal migrants could be in Britain currently. 70% who apply for asylum are getting asylum. People out there are going to find these numbers absolutely mind-boggling. Let me just probe the ECHR response to that. Let's say we exit the ECHR. Now, some people at this point, particularly on the left of politics, would say, well, that will completely jeopardise our Good Friday Agreement. That would undermine rights in the UK. It's an impossible thing to do. Only Belarus has done it, or Russia, or whatever. What's your view on that? How feasible is exiting the ECHR?
Well, I mean, you'd have to amend or abolish the Human Rights Act, step one, because the ECHR, the convention itself, is part of our domestic law. In terms of the International Court, which is part of our membership of the Council of Europe, sure, you could give that counter-argument, but you could just say, why were Belarus and Russia members to begin with? And you've got, Azerbaijan and Turkey who are members of that court, and their human rights records aren't exactly spotless.
Yeah, so, I mean, it looks like this crisis is unfortunately going to linger on, particularly under the current government. We don't seem to have an answer to it, but it seems as though at least people are beginning to think about more radical responses. Mike, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Now, look, after the break, we're going to be going back to this rape gang scandal. Absolutely outrageous. We're going to be going to the town of Keighley, and we're going to be looking at, again, why we need this national inquiry, why we need it now. Just join me in a few minutes. I'm going to give you some new information. It's pretty terrifying. See you shortly.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The sunshine will be returning to Cyprus, but still a few showers around for the next day or so. Much of mainland Greece, fine and sunny. There are the showers across Cyprus. They'll be clearing, as should the showers over Turkey as well. But remaining pretty mixed, quite cloudy over the Balkans, with a few showers in here and for northern Italy. It's been quite wet recently in southern Spain. More wet weather to come here on Thursday, and more showers to come across the Canaries. But it should be turning sunnier in Tenerife for the weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the body image thing that concerns me. It's young girls watching Love Island and really skinny girls and young boys
hit the gym after this. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, they're seeing perfect bodies on the screen.
You don't need to go in the gym, Maymoon. You look gorgeous as you are, love.
I know. You see, the reason I don't enter anything like that, Kerry, is
you're going to win.
Exactly. And it's not fair. It's not fair, I think, on everybody else being there.
It's not fair.
No.
But Kerry, what do you think about the body image thing? You know, when you talk about your daughter, is that something that you'd worry about, her comparing herself to the likes of what she sees on the screen?
Now, this is where there's a conflict of interest for me, because I've been brought up in this industry since I was 17, so it's massively affected me. I mean, when you're put on the front cover of magazines after having a baby with a stretch mark in the circle of shame, you know, it does do a psychological effect on you. I think a lot of celebrities who have been around for so many years, as I have been affected by that. But everyone has to bear in mind, I've had my children. I'm in my 40s. I feel I'm entitled to have my tweaks and try and improve on what I think are going down south, and health and safety, tripping over any things that I don't want to be tripping over anymore. But I definitely do believe, I mean, majority of the young girls that go on Love Island, they all have the same big lips, the same big eyelashes, all the butt implants, and the belly in their 20s. You know, it's, if you go to the airport now, I remember going to the airport and I looked around and all the girls looked exactly the same.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, we have just been discussing the plan for illegal migration and you've been writing in with your views. Neil says, I've been to Ascension Island. It is not suitable. It has rare species. I want illegal migrants out of Britain, but Ascension is not the answer. Richard says, what about the costs of Ascension Island? We pay again. Send them back to France. Keep your views coming in. You can hit me on X at GoodwinMJ. Now, I want to turn back to that rape gangs crisis because I'm not going to stop talking about it. A group of 8 men who were part of a West Yorkshire grooming gang in the late 1990s have now been jailed. 3 of the men, 47-year-old Ibra Hussain and brothers 62-year-old Imtiaz Ahmed and 45-year-old Fayaz Ahmed, all from Keighley, were sentenced for rape last week. They were found guilty of assaults on a girl after a trial in November and December last year. 5 other men were jailed last year for their involvement. All of this is, of course, a reminder that there are numerous cases in which justice is still yet to be done. This scandal is not historic. It is still going on in Britain today. So why have we still not got that national public inquiry into not just the grooming gangs, but the rape gangs? I'm joined now by my panel, columnist and former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire. Now, Scarlett, there's so much pressure on Labour. It's inevitable, isn't it, that we're going to have to get this national inquiry?
Look, I'm agnostic on the inquiry, but
why?
What? Because I think what we really need to do
Find the truth.
Is to find the truth, but actually is to stop it. And what we know is that there was a 7-year inquiry which had 85 pages on grooming gangs, which had 42 recommendations, none of which were put into were done and have been now since Labour's been in power. They have been looking to put them in.
This is the J inquiry.
The J inquiry.
So just to be clear, though, as everybody who's read the J inquiry knows, it looked at 6 areas, many of which were not affected by the rape gangs. So there are places like, for example, Bradford and other towns that are saying, well, we weren't included. So. Yeah. It's very clear to everybody in this country that this is a systemic national scandal.
But what I'm trying to say, Matthew, is that it is a systemic national scandal, and there were national things that could have been done about it. And there was a special... The one inquiry that everybody talks about is Telford, and I was looking at it today. Yeah. And the Telford inquiry, where, again, I mean, remember, these poor... girls had to give evidence, right?
I'm not belittling. I'm just saying I want the truth.
No, but
I want the truth. This is a national scandal.
This is great that you want the truth. Yeah. I want it to stop, right? And we can't get it to stop until we actually look at the recommendations. And in Telford they did, and in Telford it began stopping.
That's one town, but this is everywhere. This is 50 towns, according to Charlie Peters from GB News. Patrick, look, forgive me, but Labour don't seem to understand the magnitude of this.
No, I think the awful truth is that the Labour Party, top of the Labour Party, has gone backwards on this. Over a decade ago, Jack Straw told it as it was and said some Pakistani men regarded vulnerable white girls as easy meat, right, and got shouted down by people like Ed Miliband, who was the party leader at the time. Now, Yvette Cooper, the current Home Secretary, for many years she was chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. I am not aware of a single specific inquiry into the rape gangs that she conducted. As I recall, and I followed this, I tracked her, she hardly even mentioned it in dispatches. And I think it's because she has a West Yorkshire seat. She finds it an awkward problem, given the makeup of the Labour Party activist base in that part of the country.
Right. So 10 years ago, Keir Starmer was Director of the Public Prosecutions, and he reopened he was the person who started prosecuting rape gangs. No question about that. So this is not a man who covers anything up. The reason Yvette didn't do anything was because when she was Home Affairs, chair of the Home Affairs Committee, we had the Alexis Jay report, which when she became Home Secretary, she started to actually put the recommendations. What I don't understand about is we need to stop it, right? This is the big thing. We could use what we know in Telford in every single city in the country.
When did Yvette Cooper start to implement the recommendations from the Jay report?
She started September.
Right.
There were meetings before Christmas. There were meetings.
But a lot of the recommendations are not very high quality. Everyone's genuflecting to the Jay report. It's like having a cabinet minister with specific responsibility for children or whatever. That's not going to stop.
Well,
It's
can I ask
irrelevant.
just a different question here? So 77% is the percentage of Brits out there. The people watching this show, 77% are saying, well, we want a national inquiry. So whatever the arguments that are being presented, the fact of the matter is Labour is dangerously out of touch with the country on this issue. So why is that? Some people out there are suggesting this is fundamentally because Labour depends on Muslim votes.
Well, what I'm saying is that Keir Starmer started these prosecutions, right, and he intends to go on. And when he started them, he said that he would overturn. And there were two problems with these gangs. One was that they were Pakistani gangs, right, and the other.
Why is that a problem? Sorry.
That people were worried about racism, right? Well, you know this. I mean, let's not pretend. Yeah. But the other really, really serious thing was that the girls themselves, I mean, that's what was so terrible, is that they weren't considered fit to be victims, right?
But we know that they were failed not just by these gangs.
By police.
I'll tell you what worries me particularly at the moment. Another thing Jack Straw said back in the day was the Pakistani community needed to be much more open about the problem and the sources of the problem. Now, reading through the reports into this Keithley case, one thing that struck me was the apparent absence of stigma and ostracisation from the local Pakistani community towards these terrible paedophiles, even waving at them in the dock as they got sentenced.
Last question, we've only got a few seconds left. Where are all the British Muslims in mainstream media condemning this?
Well,
I'm asking, where are they?
I have no idea, as you know.
The Labour Party has strong links with civil society groups, but
it's really important that a lot of these men, they don't just rape young white women, they rape their wives, right?
Indeed.
These are men who batter their wives. Well, these are appalling
Scarlett,
people.
First of all, they're not men. I think we can all agree on that. Thank you, though, to my panel for joining. I would not consider them to be men on any level. They're criminals, rapists and sickos. Up next is Patrick Christis. Patrick, what is on your show this evening?
Well, look, hey, knives don't kill people, deranged lunatics do, and our political elites need to take responsibility, not just for Southport, but for the case today of the Afghan asylum seeker who stabbed a toddler to death at a nursery group in Germany. We are now the diversity and inclusion capital of the world, Matt. I've got some astonishing stats to bring to my viewers 9 to 11 p.m. Prince Harry's settlement deal as well. Has he turned into everything he hates with that deal? But also Tesco, Lidl, Morrison's, Asda and others. They've gone to war with Labour over farmers' inheritance tax. Surely there's a U-turn coming.
Splendid, Patrick. That's all coming up after the weather. Now, I'm going to be back with you tomorrow right here on State of the Nation. We're going to be talking about a lot more. Thank you for joining me, Matt Goodwin. Thank you to my panel. Thank you to you for tuning in. Let's keep speaking up for the forgotten majority. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, weather time now from the Met Office here on GB News. This time tomorrow, Storm Eowyn will be fast approaching, bringing potentially damaging gusts of wind during Thursday night and into Friday. Before that, tomorrow there'll be a spell of wet and windy weather, but before that, tonight, relatively calm. Some mist and fog patches, especially over eastern England, and a touch of frost per northeast England, much of eastern Scotland, and many places colder than last night, and not far off freezing to start Thursday. In the west, temperatures probably rising a little through the night because this band of rain will be moving in. It's going to make for a soggy start for Northern Ireland tomorrow. Generally, a calm start for Scotland, maybe a few mist and fog patches. Certainly a frosty start for many, particularly in the east. But there's that wet